Hey, it's Shayna. Welcome to Control Chaos, the podcast where we dive into the world of recovery, sharing stories of experience, strength, and hope from those who have been there and made it through. No matter where you are in your battle with addiction, alcoholism, or mental health struggles, know that there is a way out. Throughout my sobriety journey, I have often felt alone and doubted my ability to even stay sober. Starting this podcast in my room just 2 months ago, I had a dream of reaching people just like me, those who felt hopeless. As a woman in recovery, I began with 0 followers, but with a dream of offering hope to even just one person. The mission of this podcast is to connect, inspire, and provide hope to those feeling lost or struggling with addiction. Remember, the opposite of addiction and isolation is sobriety and connection. Let's come together through the Controlled Chaos podcast and support each other on the journey to healing and growth. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and let's build a community of support and understanding. Love you mucho. Welcome to Controlled Chaos. I'm your host, Shayna, and this is my new friend, Henry. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, well, I want to say thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So I actually live in West Virginia now, and I've been in recovery here in West Virginia for almost, well, over 6 years now. And I came out here to go to a residential treatment facility, and it was my fourth residential treatment facility. So I'm originally from Sacramento, California, and I went to uh I went to 3 treatment facilities out there before coming here. And I think the difference with this last one and why it stuck was the length of time. So it was a 6-month program. And also I think there's something that comes along with age. As you know, like someone isn't ready until they're ready, and they're not going to make the change until they're ready, which is unfortunate because I have people, families of addicts who ask me all the time, like, what can I do? What can I do? And the sad truth is, like, you can love them, you can point them in the right direction, but you really can't make them do anything, right? So, anyway, I was resistant to coming out here. I didn't want to, but I finally did. Uh and I stayed, which is something also that I finally did differently because previously in my other attempts at treatment, I just went straight home. I went straight back to the place that I was, the girlfriend that I was with, the excuse me, and the environment that I was in, and I'd never went to sober living before. I never really took the suggestions that they gave me, right? So this time I decided to do it a little differently. I decided to go to the sober living facility they recommended and stay in a different environment and not rush straight back to the place where I had done everything, for the past uh I'm 36 now. I uh I started smoking weed when I was like 12. I had some neighbors that were older, and they smoked. And actually, a funny story, I went to the Bahamas with my family, and one thing in the Bahamas is they don't really care about drinking age. So for one, I had already, like, my parents would, like, let me try sips of their stuff. And I always say, like, I had an addictive personality as far back as I can remember. I always had this thing of, like, wanting to do something I know I'm not supposed to. And when I was really young, that looked like, we had the porn channels on our black box. So, 9, 10, 11, I'm sneaking those channels on at night, or even when my parents are in the other room, I'm turning it on with the remote in my hand so I could change it when they come. So I've always, as far back as I remember, had that part of me. Um, and in the Bahamas, they would let me at like 12 years old order drinks, and they go, "It's for your parents, right, man?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, it's for my parents." And they're, okay. And I would, sit there and drink. And then I found these pipes at one of the shops, and the guy was like, "What you gonna do with that, man?" And I was like, "Smoke." And thinking back, it's really sketchy. He like took me into this weird like alleyway and then into this bathroom and he sold me some like Bammer weed. And I smuggled it home to America in my socks. So for legal purposes, this is a fake story. So yeah, like 12 years old, international.
Been caught trying to come back or whatever with you with
I,
weed in
you
your
know,
socks,
it didn't even,
right?
yeah, I mean, it's wild to even think about, but yeah. So, and then I started smoking. Um, and then the first time I ever got drunk, like really drunk partying, whatever, was with my sister. My sister's 3 years older than me, and she was going for a sleepover with her friends, and I always was kind of like the hang around. And I asked my parents if I could go with her, and they said yes. And so some of her friends were like seniors. She was probably a sophomore or whatever, or freshman maybe at this time. But anyway, I went with them and we got drunk, and it was one of those like it was at that point the highlight of my life because I'm, 12 or 13 years old, getting drunk with high school seniors. All the girls kind of like thought I was kind of cute and, that little brother way. Uh, and I feel like for me, that was a big moment of like, oh, wow, this is it. Everybody thinks I'm cool. I'm hanging out with these older kids. The girls think I'm cute. Like, this is incredible. Um, and so at that point, alcohol is not that easily accessible, but I was like a daily weed smoker or as much as I could. And when I got into high school, I got kicked out of the seventh grade, a private school, for selling weed. And I wasn't like El Chapo. I wasn't some big drug runner, but I had access to it. The kids at my school didn't. They would give me a $20 bill. I would go home, get it. I would like maybe pinch a little nug and then just give it to them. So I wasn't, I didn't have this big operation, but I was just providing the kids at my school. And, back in the day, house phones, somebody's mom overheard our conversation because she picked up the phone, dating ourselves there. And she called the school and told them. So, and my sister went to that school, and so that was the first time. That was my first like big trouble, seventh grade, and there was like this shame on my family because it was a small school, and my sister still went there, so everybody knew. The whole school, which was K through 12th, was like 600 people or something. Like it wasn't a big school. So then I got moved to public school, which is actually where I met the co-host of my show, Cameron, and just continued smoking weed as much as I could. It wasn't, all the time, and then continued through high school and started a party, found alcohol a little bit more accessible. And I was an athlete. I played sports. I played basketball and ran track, and I was a decent student. I've always been, and I say this because I think it's a characteristic of a lot of us addicts. School was pretty easy for me. Like I never really had to try very hard, and my sister hated that because she tried very hard. She did well, but she had to like work very hard at it. I was able to get decent grades and get by without really like doing that much. And I think, not all of us, but I think a lot of us have that. Like I have really bad ADHD. But I've always been like tests are super easy for me. And I think it's just an interesting thing to touch on because of, how everyone's brains are wired differently, and how I think a lot of it like there's memes and jokes about it, but a lot of us that were in like the gifted and talented programs young like ended up in rehab. And I
Mhm.
don't know exactly what that connection is, but something with like being bored and understimulated, whatever, that kind of stuff. But I always did okay. And then just to fast forward, I got kicked out of high school my junior year. Uh, and that was a big loss for me. It actually took, uh, when I was in my third rehab around, I had my 28th birthday there. And it took that time. It was a different kind of program, but we basically did a four step. And it took that time for me to realize what a big loss that was for me because I got kicked out. I got kicked out of the whole district actually. And they like made an example of me. I was like a pretty popular guy, like played sports, got along with everybody, had a lot of friends, and it felt a lot like they made an example of me. A substitute caught us coming into class after lunch smelling like weed. He told on us. They found the weed on me. I said it was mine. It turned into this big like trial, and they called me a provider because I smoked with my friend and the weed was mine, and literally expelled me from the whole district.
Mhm.
And so long story short, I couldn't really go to another school. I got homeschooled, or I started going to homeschool. But as I mentioned, I was in like honors classes. So when I went to homeschool, I was learning, reading books or learning things that I had done like 2 years ago. So I was breezing through that, and I thought it was dumb. I ended up taking my GED, but uh, along this time, I got a DUI somewhere in there, and that was around age 18. DWI. Yeah, or I got it reduced to wet and reckless. Um, and that, we were out partying and I drove. I'm sorry.
What did you say it's called?
Wet and reckless.
That must be a
It's
Virginia thing. That's crazy. Wet and
No,
red.
that was in California. What it
Oh,
is, what it's called is I got a lawyer and it's not as bad as a DUI. So if
right. I
you,
was
you know,
kind of laughing at the name Wet and Reckless. like,
yeah, it's like
have like
WHET.
read it down, but it's called different stuff. So I always
Yeah.
like what other states kind of translate that all into. Random. But
Yeah.
anyways.
Um So there's a DUI somewhere in there. And when I turned 18, my parents were like, well, you're an adult now, you can do whatever you want, which wasn't the best thing for me because I did. And also, I think the DUI, I lost my license for a year. And the cool thing about that is when you're 18 years old and a party animal and an addict, you don't have to drive. So you're never the sober driver. So,
Right.
uh, it was around that time that we found ecstasy and then started doing coke as well. And we had this like party group of people from three different schools that we all partied together. Like I said, I didn't have to drive. Um and that's when my use and drinking like really picked up.
Mhm.
And like I said, what I found, like in retrospect, what I found out is, I didn't get to finish a junior year. I didn't have a senior year. I didn't get to play my second year of varsity basketball. I didn't get to go to the proms, all that. Like, so I think at that time I was filling this hole. And, simply put, I wasn't able to be with my friends. All your senior year, it's like the culmination of all your schooling. You get to, hang out, you get to leave early, you got classes like bowling and billiards, you're just fucking off having a good time, right? And I missed that whole thing. And there was even a time like I snuck into a rally one time and they found me and they picked me out of the freaking bleachers. They took me to the principal's office. They're like, "You can't be here." And I started crying in the principal's office. I'm like, I just want to be with my friends, and they're like, "No, you're not allowed here." So anyway, like I said, in retrospect, I found out that that was a big loss for me.
So
Um,
not only were you kicked like out of school, but you weren't allowed to go to like the events, like games or like anything like that.
yeah, I was
Wow,
excommunicated.
that's
Yeah.
crazy. Because I had so many friends that got kicked out and went to like alternative school and stuff like that. And I got pregnant my junior year, so like I kind of have that same
Hey.
feeling of like missing out, but all of us always were at the games together and stuff. So I could imagine that was like, I mean, it sounds small, but I can imagine that's like heartbreaking. Like all your friends are doing all these things together and you can't be even there for it.
Right. No,
That would
it was a huge loss.
that would be huge at that age because even me, my senior year, I toted my little baby to little basketball games and all that stuff because I just wanted to be like included. I wanted to be like everybody
Mhm.
else.
Well, look at us because the next part of my story, my daughter was conceived on the senior trip, which I went on, even though it wasn't because it wasn't a school funded or like, it was a camping trip.
Mhm.
And on the night my daughter was conceived, I was arrested for. So I was 18. I'm a fall baby, so I was always like a little bit older in our class. So I was one of the only people who were 18. Um, and the cops came, a bunch of people ran, whatever. I didn't run. I thought I was, no
You were
problem.
like
They're just gonna leave.
8, 9.
Yeah. Well, which was turned out to be the opposite. I definitely should have ran into the woods like my friends, but
Right.
they handcuffed me and they went and they were talking to other people and I had a little bag of cocaine in my little um change pocket on my jeans, and like when they walked off and were talking to other people, I reached around, I took it out and I threw it on the ground. And then they came back and they basically arrested me because I was 18. A lot of other people, their parents came and stuff, but since I was 18, I was an adult. And when they put me in the car, they came over and they had the little bag. They were like, "Hey, this is yours." And I was like, "This is the only smart thing I've ever done as a kid." But I was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about. That's not mine. I've never seen it before." So that was, I guess, yeah, my second time going to jail.
Mhm.
And um, I beat that case. Like it ended up just, like minor in possession for alcohol because I was drunk. But Um, so at this point, my parents, they're under no illusion that I don't have a problem. Like they know I get in trouble, shit always happens to me. I don't seem to be able to control it, and something bad always happens. Um, but then I am thrust into parenthood at the ripe age of 18, basically 19 by the time she's born, and I'm, a full blown alcoholic and addict. I got with her mom. She's also one of us. We like to do coke a lot.
Mhm.
So that was a wild time of, I mean, even a sober 18-year-old, which I don't know if you were or not, is not really prepared to be someone's parent, you know. But you add alcohol and drugs into that, and it's just so
Mhm.
that was wild. Um, and when I turned 21, my drinking got even worse because then it was just I could go to the bar, I could go buy it anytime. Um, went to the bar one night. My daughter's mom was mad that I left. She woke up, I was gone. I came home, tried to open the door, unlock the door. She was holding the lock. I ended up kicking the door in, fighting, screaming, cussing. Cops show up. I went to jail. Um what do they call it, child endangerment, because my daughter was there and it was an apartment complex, so three or four different neighbors probably heard us fighting and yelling, and me kicked the door in. uh and yeah, my 20s were, and that was the first time I went to rehab after I went to jail that time. And that at that point, that was like a dog and pony show. Because in my mind, I'm like, there's zero chance that I'm gonna never drink or use any drugs ever again. But I'll do this for you guys, you know.
Can I ask,
And
for your parents like wanting you to go, and like your girlfriend, or like what was the, because this is kind of like a common theme, right? Like the first few times most of us go to rehab more than once, and that's not like a brag, right? That's like a, something doesn't usually work the first few times, and I think it
Mhm.
has a lot to do with doing what other people want us to do.
Yeah,
So you kind of touched on that. Was it like your parents? Was it, what was it that was kind of like, you need to get your shit together?
it was definitely my parents, and I'll say I'm very blessed to have the parents that I have
Yeah.
who stuck with me, care about me, supported me, and had like the resources to help me. Because Cameron, my partner, touched on this on one of our last episodes, but he was like, if I didn't have the parents he was talking about homeless people, and he was like, if I didn't have the parents I had, I could be one of them, and I have to remember that. And I'm the same position. Like I think I could easily, if I didn't have my parents who were willing to fight for me and stick with me through all the shit that I did, I could be homeless right now easily. So I will say, like, I'm blessed to have awesome parents. My dad was very tough on us when I was young, and that's, you know, a whole nother story that we can talk about if we want to. He's since gotten a lot better.
Mhm.
But the other thing I do like to mention, because I think a lot of people who have addiction as part of their story, they also had really tough childhoods. They had major loss, they had really bad parents, they only had one parent, they had physical abuse, they had sexual abuse and all that. And I do like to mention that that's not really a part of my story. My dad was he's a very angry person. He was very verbally abusive, but which I don't want to minimize, but at the same time, sexual abuse or physical abuse or like a bad home where the water and the lights got turned off, and that wasn't part of my story. Like, I had a good family who provided for me. And I say that just so that if anybody is in my situation, because I think one of my problems early on was like, oh, I'm not like these people, right? When someone said, yeah, I was sexually abused, I'm like, and not even in a bad way. I was just like, oh, I almost like, in a weird way, I look down on myself where I'm like, oh, I don't have any reason to be the piece of shit that I am. Like, I don't even have an excuse because
Yeah.
my life was all right. My parents took me to the Bahamas and stuff like that. Like, I had a good life. I didn't want for anything. We were, upper middle class. Like, I always had meals. My mom cooked dinner every night. It's like,
I,
it's
I completely agree with that, because that was part of my problem forever. And I don't even want to say part of why I couldn't get sober. But for the longest time, and up until I've been sober 3 years, and up until like a few months ago, I actually did a podcast with a psychotherapist. And she was like, girl, you have a ton of trauma. Why do you keep saying you don't have any trauma? And I was like, because in my head, I've always looked at other people, and I worked in rehab for almost 2 decades. So, like, I've seen people who have been through some shit, right?
right.
I
Hmm.
always looked at my life and kind of like you, like when I was younger, my mom and dad would kind of be, my dad was a warden. He would be, a little more vocal than other people. And my mom she was definitely a yeller and like but I was like, they weren't abusing me, and they would have done anything. To this day, if something happened to me, I could call my parents and they would be here like that. Right. So I just attributed that to, I've never been through anything. But that's not
Hmm.
really the case, even things that are not like, say for instance, rape or something like that. Just because you haven't been through that doesn't mean you haven't been through trauma. And that's something I didn't learn until
Yeah.
really, really recently. Even like my relationship, with my ex-husband, who I had kids with when I was younger, was like super traumatic. But I would always compare it to other people, right? And I'm like, oh God. like even my husband's life was like rough, right? And had been homeless like numerous times and didn't have anyone to help him a lot of times. And I would always look at it and be like, I don't know why I'm an addict alcoholic because my childhood was really good. And it was really good. But there were things that were traumatic, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
a good point that you bring up that like sometimes I think because we love our parents so much and they've done so much for us and they have, it's hard to say like, "Ooh, they did make some mistakes." But even me as a parent now, I've made hella mistakes. I love my kids to
Yeah.
death. Abusive, but I hope as they grow up and they get therapy and stuff that they like work on the stuff that's like troubled them, right? Because I think it's sometimes you don't know. You're like, it's not this, so it's nothing, right?
Mhm. Well, that's why I put big emphasis when I was telling my story about how I realized when I was 28 what a big loss it was for me getting kicked out of school, because at that point I was just like, "Oh, I don't have to go to school. I can do whatever I want. I'm homeschool. I'm chilling now." And I brushed it off as though it was nothing, but we also just had a guest on and he talked about trauma and how, it's not a competition. And
Right.
to your young lizard brain,
Yeah.
being yelled at by your parents or something much worse is it has the same effect.
Hmm.
So whether you think it's like this awful, and I agree. I went and visited my cousin not too long ago. This was like a year or two ago. She lives in North Carolina and we went down there and she said to me, oh God, I'm getting a little emotional. She said to me, "Hen, your dad was really hard on you." And I started crying a little bit because I had this like idea, and this is what we're talking about, right? Of like, oh, my life wasn't that bad. Maybe I made it up. Maybe I blew it up to like to make myself feel better to justify my addiction or something. Cause God, my life wasn't that bad, right? And when she said that, I just felt this like relief and justification, like, okay, it was fucked up. Someone else noticed besides like me and my sister, like I didn't just make all that up. Like my dad, and he'll be the first to tell you too. And he's like to his credit, he's changed more than anyone I know that's not in recovery.
Hmm.
He's really apologetic, and I've told him a lot of times, like, "Hey, Dad, I forgive you. Like that's old. We've moved on. You've changed. You've become better. Like let's just leave it in the past."
Just like seeing that our parents were raised differently than us too. Like my dad used to get his ass beat with like switches
Yep.
and bells. My dad was like, I would be literally running from my dad. Like, you have to catch me. Right. So, like, how
Yeah.
they grew up was so different from us, and they were just expected to take it. That even though they loved us so much, and I was probably the one that my parents were the easiest on. I'm the baby, right? So I
Hmm.
had it the easiest compared to my sisters and brothers who are like 10 years older than me, right? So God knows how they felt. But I'm just saying that like it doesn't make them like bad people like what we think when we say that it was like rough a little bit doesn't make them bad people. It's like they were raised differently and they have tried to evolve too. But you don't know better until you know better, right?
Yeah. God, her name is escaping me, and you probably know her if I said it, but I listened to her podcast, and she said maybe they were doing the best they could with what they had.
Oh, 100%.
And
Yeah.
I applied that to my dad, and he was the same. He was the oldest child, and his mom's single mom, two jobs, and he basically had to raise his little brothers and sisters. And when anybody did anything, it was his fault, and he got his ass beat, like physically. And he's turned around and started a business and provided this incredible life for me. And maybe he's doing his mom lived in a chicken coop. We love to, he loved to tell that story. So
Right.
you add all that in, and like, and the other thing that we talked about, when we're younger, we see like teachers, or we see our parents as these adults, these omnipotent, all-knowing, and then you
Her-
get older and you're like, I didn't know fucking anything at 28. I was in no position to raise a kid at 18 and I wasn't even at 26 or 28. Like I'm 36 years old and I just barely feel like I'm starting to know things and understand and become a successful adult. So to imagine that, your parents at whenever they had you, my mom was probably 24, my dad was older, he was like 32, but even then, like, what do you know? No one knows. No one has it all figured out. So that's another reason, like, I try to grant people grace, right?
yeah.
That thing, like you said, like maybe your parents, to think that they just had it all figured out is crazy.
But it's also like, okay, and I just started learning this, right? So you're right when you say that. We didn't know what the hell was going on. It's also okay for us to look back and be like, okay, that wasn't the greatest. And maybe we do like need to heal from that, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what I'd always be like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like other people have been through stuff. I haven't been through stuff. And it's like, I don't know. You've spent 20 years going through some shit.
Yeah. Well, my dad said something to me one time that I always talk about, and
Mhm.
it hit me. He said, "Henry, how long are you going to keep blaming me for your problems?"
Right.
And he said it really sharp and really like because he was sick of it, if you were so mean to me, whatever. But it hit me when he said it, where and our last guest talked about this. He said, oh God, it was so good how he said it. Um, your I'm gonna pull this up really quickly so I don't butcher it actually because it was so good. Um, sorry.
You're fine.
You own the results you're experiencing and also how others are experiencing you. And oh, I'm this way because this happened when I was a kid. Well, how fucking long are you going to use that as a crutch, an excuse? Everybody has had trauma, like we talked about. Everybody has had, most people have had hard things happen to them, and it sucks. And I'm sorry that happened to you, but are you going to use that as an excuse to mope around for the rest of your life, or are you gonna like move on? And I hate to do like the pick yourself up by your bootstraps because I like to think I'm a little more sensitive from that than that. But
But you
like
have
at
to
the
heal.
same time, yeah, are you gonna be a victim of it your entire life, or are you gonna take responsibility? And that's what I had to do, realized I had to do when he said that. It's like, oh, he's right. That did suck, but, like, how long am I gonna use that as an excuse to be a piece of shit?
Right. Because there's also the fact that like we can't go back and change what happened. So like we
No.
have to from it and move on, or it's just gonna mess up our lives, our kids' lives. Like it all just keeps going forward.
Yeah, and, yeah, so, like, taking personal responsibility and fixing, you know, fixing what I can change, what I control ends right here at these fingertips. So, I don't I had to do anger management for a few different stints for a few different of my missteps, and my teacher was incredible. I really loved her, and I really learned a lot from her. God rest her soul, Claudia Diaz. She was awesome. And one of the things I learned so much, but she would always say, first of all, you can't control another human being. What you control ends right here, and you can only control your reaction and how you react. And that's another, we talk about it in in recovery all the time, but she would say between action and reaction there is a space, and in that space is choice. So, oh, well, I did it because she did it. If you wouldn't have, no, that They people are allowed to be shitty and throw shit. This is what she would say too. People are always gonna throw shit. You get to decide if you're going to stay there and let them fling the shit on you, or if you're going to move your space. So you don't get to control them doing it or not, but you get to control if you let them, if you're going to let them be in your space, or if you're going to move your space and let them be shitty on their own. And that's why, like, one of the biggest things for me, because I was a big people pleaser, is boundaries. Like, I've done a lot of work on boundaries, enforcing my boundaries, and that is where I've found like a lot of freedom and peace of like not allowing people who sling shit to be in my space or sling it on me.
I like that. That's a good one. Move your space.
Mhm. Like, and that like emphasis on move your space, because when you get into like, no, get the fuck away from me, well, then you're getting confrontational, and then maybe you have to fight somebody, and then you go to jail, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, basically like toxic people, cutting out toxic people. Like if someone's going to act like that and always be trying to cause drama or start a fight or argue, I just don't associate with those people. Like
Right.
your time is valuable. My time is valuable, and I get to choose who I give my time to. And the people who are constantly stirring up shit and causing problems and drama, like I don't choose to give those people my time.
Right. So what does your recovery look like? Like how long have you been in recovery, first of all?
Well, yeah, I've been here in West Virginia for like a little over 6 years. I do not have 6 years of continuous sobriety, so I had a little slip
Mhm.
about 6 months back. So, but we're back on the horse. And I try not to like dwell on it or beat myself up, because one of the things that I've told a lot, because I've had sponsees, and I work with a lot of people in recovery. And one of the things I had to go back to treatment in West Virginia like 2.5 years ago for a
Mhm.
little tune up, and I was really hard on myself. I was really upset with myself because at that time I had 3.5 years and I relapse, bad relationship breakup, blah, 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 whatever excuse. And I was being really hard on myself, and someone or several people were like, "Henry, you beating yourself up is of no value. There's no value to living in the past, beating yourself up, being upset. No one else is beating you up. No one else is being as hard on you as you are. Let that shit go." And since then, I've been the biggest advocate of that, because we can't, you said it a little bit ago, we can't change that. It's done. What do we do moving forward? Like you talk about like a living amends, where, oh, I was a piece of shit. I did so much bad things to so many people. Well, guess what? You can't change that. What can you do? You can not be that person anymore. You cannot do those actions anymore. So we're talking about living in today and moving forward. So I always preach like, you cannot live in the past. You cannot beat yourself up about your mistakes, because it holds no value. All it does is bring you down. All it does is keep you out of the present moment. You're not being present in today because you're living in the past and worrying about things you can't change.
Right.
Um, I feel like I got very sidetracked on this question.
That's okay. I just said, how long have you been in recovery? But honestly, I don't count anymore my days either because of the same reason. I kept on relapsing, and it was like I would have like a few months or whatever, and then I would throw it all away for a year because of that, right? Because not because of that, but because I was shaming myself so much about it that I would continue
Yeah.
drinking, because I was like, whatever, I already messed it up. And actually, the last time that I quit counting, it's been about 3 years since then, and I preach that all the time. Not that I don't like know my roundabout or whatever, but I'm like, if you mess up, minus your day and move on. Like there's nothing you can do about it.
Hmm.
I got so tired of starting over. Like that time doesn't count. No, it counts. And you learned a lot from it, and you were functioning and you were doing well.
Right.
And I just I think that we have like a lot of old um ideology what's the word, ideologies, and
Ideological, yeah, ideology.
and sometimes they just don't serve us. Like, just move on and keep going, because shame is like this circle that an addict or an alcoholic will take to the end.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the newcomer is the most important person in the room, right? But when people relapse, sometimes
You don't
people
want to be
forget that rule. Well, and people treat people like crap who relapse when we tell people all the time, like, no, this is you're anyone's welcome here. You can't be kicked out. Like this is where if the newcomer is the most important person in the room and someone relapses, they're a newcomer and, treat them like the most important person in the room and welcome them back with open arms. And I think the problem is, and especially with all the fentanyl that's around, it's
Mhm.
it's dangerous, right? People can die, and a lot of my friends have died. So we certainly don't want to sit up here and say, "Oh yeah, it's okay to just relapse." But like you said, we had all that time, and that's why I say I've been in recovery for 6 plus years. I don't have that continuous clean time, but I've learned a lot in all that time, and
Yeah.
I still have all that knowledge that I've learned, and I don't like to get overly caught up in the exact consecutive days, which is a beautiful thing. Abstinence and having consecutive days is awesome,
Yeah.
and I strive for that.
Go for relapsing, but
Right,
it stands that if you've already relapsed, it doesn't help you to stay there and shame yourself. Like, you need to move
right.
on, you need to continue with life and do what you want to do, which is probably get sober. That's
Mhm.
all. I think just like shaming yourself keeps you in this cycle that you feel like you can't get out of. But of course, we don't want to go for a relapse. Not like the
Well,
goal.
and just no, yeah, and just to get to some of the hope portion, the things that I've achieved um, since being here, I I I own a home, which I never thought I never thought I would be like an adult. I never thought I would own a home. I never thought I would plan a vacation and pay for it, like things like that. I own a home.
Okay.
I have an Airbnb with my family. I'm partners that I run here. Um, I'm getting married next month. I
Congratulations.
I actually rent the home that I own and I live with my fiance now. And all these things, like the quality of my life now from what I've achieved in, being on this journey for these 7 years is incredible. And like I said, it's stuff that I never thought I would have. So and I wouldn't and the thing is, like, there's no way, knowing what I know now and experiencing the freedom that I have, that I could ever go back. And that's why I try not to beat myself up about the relapses and stuff, because I know I'll never go back to that lifestyle. I love the life that I have today, and waking up feeling like shit, feeling like a piece of shit, like having poisoned myself where I can't get up. Because you said, what does my program looks like? My program looks like, um, I go to the gym a lot, and it's funny, I was listening to one of your other guests, and he said the same thing, and I was like, I'm basically just this guy again. But the gym is a big part of my program. He talked about those endorphins, and we talk about like the commitment and the consistency and the way it makes you feel mentally. It's not just like, oh, I want to look good physically. It's, longevity, and I always work out before we record our podcast because I find that I have a better show. Like, I've done it without working and I'm not as sharp mentally. So just the feeling it gives me and the pride of like being consistent, because I've been basically working out for 6 years. I do go to some meetings. I do mostly NA, even though I'm more of an alcoholic. I have sponsored people in the past, but once I relapsed and started over, I haven't done that. Another big part of my program is doing the podcast.
Yeah.
Because Cameron and I, if we always say like if no one listened, it would still be worth it for us to have that conversation for an hour every week.
I agree. I feel like it's like healing in a way to listen to other people's stories and relate. And I guess a lot of people, what people don't know who aren't, in the whole alcohol addiction scene is like how alone you feel, even when you're in a
Mhm.
group of people, right? Like you
Yeah.
really, there's nobody in the world who feels like this or who has
Yes.
done these things that I'm doing. Like I remember when I was struggling, like I was so depressed and so sick all the time that even like showering was like I
Mhm.
was not even doing that for like weeks. And like
Oh,
I like look at that now and I'm like, oh my God, I would think like it was so embarrassing and like nobody's ever been through that. And like, no, it's really like a common thing, right? So like hearing those things that like you're not crazy is like
yeah.
good.
Yeah, well, the and that's the beauty of meetings because it's funny you're telling my story, right? No one feels like this. No one has it as bad as me. No one understands me. And if you go to meetings and you listen for the similarities and not the differences, because like I said in the beginning, I'm like, oh, well, that person was sexually abused. I wasn't sexually abused, so how could we be the same? No, you're listening for the difference. If you listen for the similarity of they held their hands on the counter and looked in the mirror and told themselves how much they fucking hated themselves, like, oh yeah, I did that too. When you say difficulty showering, the most simple tasks, I couldn't get out of bed. I would only get out of bed when I would run to the bathroom to throw up and then lay on the floor for a while, then prop myself up on the sink and sit there and talk to myself. Is this cool, Henry? Are you having fun? Or is this a good time? You piece of shit, and just terrible self-talk. Tell myself how much I hate each other. Try to work up the courage and the energy to drive to the liquor store and get some more alcohol. Like it was a terrible existence, and
That's the other
we are.
thing, people will be hard on you, right? And not that you shouldn't, right? Of course, we don't want to enable people, but people don't realize how hard we are on ourselves and how we already know. And like, even when you just talked about like trying to get yourself to the liquor store, like I would have done anything to like figure out how to get liquor to me because like I was so
Mhm.
sick that I would be scared to walk from my car to the register at the store. Like I was going to pass out because it had been too long since I drank or whatever. And I'd be like shaking and feeling like I'm going to pass out and die or have a seizure. And I'd be scared to even walk in there. And like as soon as I would drink, like it would be okay again. Did I feel great? No. But did I stop feeling
Uh,
like I was going to die? Yes.
yeah. That, yeah, ugh, I'm getting like chills. I'm having so much recall, man. I used to also they say we have an allergy to it. When I would pull into the liquor store, I would start gagging a lot of times. Sometimes I would even throw up uh because just like thinking about the alcohol, and then as I would get in my car. We're not waiting until we get home, right? I'm cracking that thing
Never.
immediately in the front seat, taking a drink, and then I'm gagging or either maybe throwing up off my first drink, and then I get a little more in me, and then like I feel okay again. And I like what you said because I just said the same thing to my cousin. She's having trouble with someone in her life right now, and I didn't like I told her, yeah, you should do this, give him tough love, but also I just want you to know he's not, like, having a great time. He
No.
doesn't, like, think, "Ha I'm getting away with it, this is so fun," because it's an opiate addiction, and I'm like, "I just want you to know," because she's like, "Me and the kids and, like, fuck our family," and I'm like, without trying to, like, make up excuses for him or anything like that, but just know that he's not sitting there laughing to the bank, having a great time, like, "Oh, I'm ruining my family, this is so fun," and he's also not getting, like, high, he's maintaining. So,
He's
like,
just
if you have this
probably.
yeah, and so I'm like, if you have this picture that he's just, like, out there jolly having a great time. He's not. And just know that like he's living in this prison of his own creation, and the power of addiction is
Crazy.
it's incredible, and like people who haven't experienced it, I think it's so hard for them to understand, but when you felt that, oh my god, it's uh, like words can't describe it. It's really hard to describe because the power of it is just it's confounding.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's like, even there's this like mental obsession that people don't understand, because you will have a time of sobriety sometimes and you'll still go back to it. And it's like, how does that happen? Why does that happen? Like, mental obsession is like, it's real. And it's not because you were having the greatest time when you were doing it. It's because you have a brain that is alcoholic addict. Like, that's really it. And it's one of the hardest things to explain. I was helping somebody get sober recently, and she was like, when it's getting towards the end of work, I can literally see I'm itchy, and I can literally see all the bumps all over my hands and all over my feet. And it's like I'm breaking out. I haven't even done anything yet, but she's breaking out just in an anticipation of getting that next drink and not having it. And like, okay, I have 40 minutes till I get home and I can drink and I can do. It's like, it's not even just in our head, right? It's like physical
A
also.
physical, yeah.
Yeah, and I
Oh
mean, I
man.
see it on her. Like, it's crazy. I'm like, no, our body really does physically react to this.
Yeah, and I was a daily, all day, every day drinker. I was able to maintain a job, but partially because I worked for my dad and he kind of knew, but again, back to like where I did okay in school without trying too hard. I was also pretty good at my job even though I was drunk all the time, and I did residential solar in California, like install. So I
Mhm.
was working on roofs and in hot electrical panels, having started drinking vodka at 5:30, 6 a.m. What I would do is I would try to leave a little bit, just like a shot in my bottle every night for when I first woke up, just to get that shot in me and get going. And then I knew all the
But
liquor stores. Huh?
to feel normal.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy about it is like in opiate addiction, they call it like getting well, right? Well, I did the exact same thing with alcohol, and I know
Yeah.
you can relate. I heard you say it like I felt like shit until I got a little bit in me. I couldn't eat anything until I got like a decent amount in me. Sometimes all I would eat in a day was an apple. But I knew the liquor stores that were open early that would sell liquor. I would stop at them. I drove like an hour and a half, 2 hours to the Bay Area. I'd be towing a trailer and I would always have a pint of vodka under my seat. Um, and this was all day, every day. And then, drinking hard liquor all day, working in the sun and stuff. There would be times I'd be driving home where I'm like two hands on the wheel, white knuckling it, like praying to a God I don't necessarily believe in to just get me home safely because I'm like been drinking vodka all day and I got a trailer behind, like wild, wild stuff that, and I've told people like normies and they're like, "Wait, you would drink at 5:30 in the morning?" I'm like, without thinking twice, with
I
it being the
really
very first thing.
go to the bathroom and have to drink. Like, people drink water at night, like, it just to feel better and to go back to sleep. Like, I did
Yeah.
it just like
You
was
would
like,
get the DTs and everything?
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it just
Mm,
is crazy, because I also was talking to this person's, family that I was helping get sober, and they were just like, no, like, if she wanted to get sober, she would be sober right now. But she's drinking right now, I bet. And I'm like, I totally understand that thinking. But what you're not getting is, a person who's been drinking for 20 years can't just up and stop today. Like, it's
yeah.
not safe, right? So like, it's
Oh,
so hard to like tell people how it feels or what it's like. And I think probably the same as you. That's why I started doing this podcast. It helps me a lot But also I want other people to see that, like, it's not anything that anyone is ever doing on purpose. Like, it's not a life that you like, yes, I want to do this for the rest of my life. No, like there was many
Yeah.
days that I prayed that I wouldn't wake up because I couldn't fix it and I was tired of doing it. And like that's the craziest place to be. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't fix it and I didn't want to live like that. And I was like,
Oh,
wow, so hard I can't fix it. And that's the other thing people say a lot is like, if you're not getting sober, like you haven't tried hard enough. And sometimes I feel that's the case, but sometimes I feel you just haven't put together the right tools or figured it out, like how to do it.
where you haven't experienced enough pain,
Enough
that's they say when it gets bad enough, and that's, it's you never want to say, well, I guess go out there and experience some more pain, but it's what do they say when the pain of staying the same gets great enough, you'll do something, and that is the hardest part. Like I think I was just so tired of, the self-hatred and the cycle and just feeling like a piece of shit and feeling like I would never be anything. And yeah, I don't even know what it was that clicked for me, but that, like you said, we're not having a great time. One of my other mentors, he always said it's fun with problems, and then just problems. Those are the three
yeah.
stages. So for me, fun was a long, long time ago. That ended almost like 21, maybe
Right.
24
Hold
max.
on.
So fun with problems was like 24 to 28, and then just problems was after that. Like, and so it's not, and that's the crazy thing is like people, oh yeah, they just like to party and have a good time. And it's like, no, we stopped having a good time so long ago. Now we're just trapped in this cycle.
Survival.
Uh,
Survival.
survival, maintenance. Yeah. Oh
Well,
man,
gosh,
this is like
a
bringing
good
it all back.
getting to talk with you today. Our time is almost wrapping up. I could talk to you forever.
Yeah,
Um,
I know.
but is there anything that you want to make sure to like get across to people today? Is there anything that you want to make sure that people hear?
Hmm. So if if you are a family member of an addict, a family or a friend, uh grant them some grace and show some compassion, but at the same time, sometimes it's the tough love that can make the difference. Um because if we can love somebody to death, right? So you can't keep enabling them. At some point you have to put your foot down. And like for me, it took, my dad was like, Henry, if this is what the fuck you want to do, then leave us out of it. We don't want to be part, we can't be part of your life if you're going to be like this. And that was a big moment for me of being like, I really sat there and thought, do I want to just lose my family? Do I want to give up my family for this?
Right.
And that helped. And then if you're an addict, I would say that you're not alone and you don't have to be alone. And that's why you have this podcast. That's why I have my podcast. Another thing I love about it is not everybody wants to go to a meeting. People are afraid to go to a meeting, or maybe they're not able to go. So we have these little meetings. We do this, you and I, to show people that you're not alone and you have people that have had the same experiences as you and also care about you and love you. Even if I don't know you, if you're struggling and you've been through what I've been through, and you'd like to change, I love you. I have love for you because I understand what it feels like to be in your position. And like I said, you're not alone. You're not the only one who's ever felt that way. And there is a lot of help.
I love that. So, real quick, over at Controlled Chaos, we're going to be having a sobriety success seminar. So, if you've been thinking about getting sober, message me. It's going to be May 26th at noon. So if you've been looking at getting sober, if you're an alcoholic, if you might be a gray drinker, you want to just try it for 30 days, whatever your reason is, we're going to be doing some tips on how to get sober, things on, working on long-term sobriety, that type of thing, and still being
Awesome.
able to have a happy, fun life. So that's what we're doing here. What about you? What do you have going on? Where can people find you at? What is your podcast called? Give us the nitty-gritty.
So we are the Rude Dude Recovery Pod, and we're Rude Dude Pod on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, Facebook, and we drop an episode every week, every Monday. We have experts sometimes, or we have people, like me, who just addicts who share their stories, and sometimes we do topics like we talk about boundaries, or anything, and we also try to have a good time and mix a little humor in with it, because we didn't get sober to be boring and have a
Right.
bad time. So if you're into self-improvement, if you're into this podcast, if you're into like becoming a better version of yourself, whether you're an addict or not, and I think that's another important thing that you kind of hinted at, which is a lot of non-addicts or families of addicts listen to our show, and they're like, you get to hear from an addict's perspective. And I've had like my cousin I talked about reach out, and several people like, I never thought about it like that. I never even realized that that's how you guys thought of it. So we really try to just bring to light things that a lot of people don't understand, and share stories of hope, and a message of positivity and self-awareness and self-improvement.
Yes. Well, I thank you so much for coming on today. It was such a good
Thank you.
time.
As we conclude this powerful episode of Controlled Chaos, a recovery podcast, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each and every listener who has joined us on this journey of resilience and renewal. These stories are shared with the hope that someone out there struggling in the shadows of addiction may find a glimmer of hope and inspiration. If you're listening and in need of support on your own path to sobriety, please remember that you are not alone. Visit my website at www.controlledchaoscoaching.com and schedule a discovery call today. Together we can explore the possibilities of healing, growth, and a brighter future ahead. Thank you for being a part of this community, for your courage in facing your challenges, and for believing in the power of transformation. Remember, there's always hope, and help is within reach. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and keep moving forward on your journey to recovery. Love you mucho.